Hello, this is Jimmy Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. So first we have, the Supreme Court has agreed to take up Trump's appeal to stay on Colorado's ballot, some analysis on possible outcomes, and that's from BusinessInsider.com by Zachness. And, yeah, I think they'll probably rule that he'll be okay, but we'll see what happens there. Then we have, do we need a civility rule in the sub by Paton13. And I said, that's self-post, by the way. They were one of the moderators, and they're asking a question they later implement, as we'll see them do. Yeah, so I said, what did I say? I said, I don't think we need any rules, to be honest, but that is just libertarian in me speaking. Then we have, I'm out from 2000 Time of Charm, and they said, it's been fun, guys. Sub isn't my fault, would be. I don't like calling people names, that's not me, but the trolling and now abusive mod powers is a bit much. Peace. And I said, I'll miss you. You were one of the few people here to really break up the circle jerk. Then we have a tense new January 6th video shows Republican congressmen admonishing rioters trying to enter House chamber from NBCNews.com by Kage blah blah blah. And, yeah. I personally think, they shouldn't be doing that. But I like what Finky Sushi here says. The so kind misleading headline, the conservative congressmen were admonishing the rioters to stop trying to break in. The one literally put a shame on you at them for the broken glass. And, that's just kind of Reddit for you. It's more about the agenda than factually being correct. That's pretty much all social media, though. And traditional media as well, I would say. It's more narratives than anything else. I personally don't care for January 6th, but, you have this narrative around it that it's the worst thing ever and we need to give up all our liberties so it never happens again. And that's not how I think it should be. That needs to be what they did for 9/11, and we know how that turned out. That didn't turn out well. So we don't trust whenever they use some an event like January 6th to market giving up all your freedoms, because that's not something that I think is going to come out in the long run. Come out good in the long run. Then we have flood of anti-LGBTQ bills shows GOP wants to eradicate trans people from public life. From Salon.com by Clorox. This is a crossroads from the conservative terrorism subreddit. And, yeah, I don't think that's good, but, a lot of the people are, the politicians from both major parties are very authoritarian, and it's important to remember that, it doesn't matter what the bills say, it matters how they are enforced, and that's increasingly, I think, that's why I don't think you should be, that's why I think all the bills, I would say, you should just view them as illegitimate, because it doesn't matter what bullshit's in them, it matters how they try and enforce it on you, and I personally don't like anything getting enforced on me, and that's why I personally don't really care for any laws, I would say. Then we have yet another tanky denying the Uyghur genocide from Reluctant Old Account and crosswords from the Tanky Jerk subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think you should be denying the Uyghur genocide. I think you should have the free speech to do so. I think you should have the free speech to do whatever you want with your words. But I definitely do think, we shouldn't be denying genocides, especially, even if they're just, I think the Uyghur genocide is mostly cultural, if anything, and not really very physical, but I still think, it probably qualifies as a genocide. But, but I also do think it's kind of being used as war propaganda to push the U.S. into a war with China, and that's something that's also important, but I definitely don't think it's good that we shouldn't be justifying it, or pretending it's not happening. Then we have, Trump did not sign Illinois loyalty oath that says he won't advocate for overthrowing the government from WBEZ.org. By Donald Key, and I said, Orange Man Bad, day 3126. I don't really care about Trump, but the circle jerk surrounding him can get pretty obnoxious, especially since it's been going on for almost a decade now. Then we have A meme from nailed it. The U.S. has survived far worse than January 6th, but all that other stuff isn't used for pushing an agenda currently. And that's a meme I posted from Being Libertarian on Twitter. And it was the January 6th a guy getting the medal and popping his champagne, but he's in like 12th place behind Pearl Harbor, 9/11, Civil War II, World Wars, OKC bombing, Ruby Ridge, Waco siege, Kent State massacre. And I said, they aren't using Ruby Ridge to push an agenda currently. They are using January 6th. I remember they used 9/11 for years to push an agenda of stuff like the Patriot Act and the War on Terror, and now they've seemingly switched out for January 6th. And you can't question that. And I think definitely you're seeing January 6th being used to push this very unlibertarian agenda that says, "Oh, give the state more control so this won't happen again, and so we can save democracy." And I don't think that is something that's libertarian, and I think that's why, I personally just think it's mostly media hype, if anything else, just like 9/11 was. 9/11 was bad, January 6th was bad, but at some point you gotta move on. Then we have McDonald's CEO gives a public statement on how boycott is affecting the business from this crosswords from the Palestine subreddit, and by International Liver One. And yeah, I don't think it's probably doing too much of a dent in their stuff, but I definitely hope I do hope it's I do always love when people stand up against big business, so I do hope it is more successful than it and I do hope it's more successful over time. I would say. Then we have Geoism as part of the left libertarian tradition from progressandpoverty.substack.com, and that's by Anarcho Federation. And I personally am not too, really into all the left libertarianism. As much more, I'm more libertarian centrist, I would say. But, if you want to do Geoism, I think you should be able to, as long as you're not forcing other people to do it without their consent. That's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump in Iowa demands release of those jailed for 2021 Capitol attack from Kage blah blah blah. And I said, I don't know if I commented on this one, but yeah, this is just kind of another orange man bad Fred. But yeah, I personally do think, if they were nonviolent, I don't think there should be any nonviolent offenders in prison for this long. So I guess free the nonviolent offenders, but keep the violent ones in there, I would say. Then we have conservative group files a wrongful death suit on behalf of Ashley Babbitt of Babbitt's family against U.S. government from NBCNews.com by Zachness. And yeah, I personally don't care for Ashley Babbitt, but I don't think the state should be killing people. I guess I could see the argument for this as well. So that's my thought on that issue. I don't really care for her reasons of going into the Capitol, but I don't think the police officers should be shooting people, especially ones that aren't shooting back, I would say. Then we have White House for sale, how princes, prime ministers, and premiers paid off President Trump from oversight Democrats at House.gov by Whittling Dan. And I said, Orange Man Bad, day 3,127. And I don't like Trump, just like I don't like Obama or Biden, but you guys have been doing this for 3,127 days now. It's got to be tiresome after so long. Then we have Michigan GOP head refuses to leave after vote for her ouster from the JallyBeast.com by Kage blah blah blah. And yeah, ultimately it does come down to who have it doesn't really matter what the vote is if you don't leave the position, ultimately the votes are irrelevant. I would say is if you're going to justify what you justify. That's why I don't think voting really matters. People will just justify what they justify anyway. It doesn't really matter what the vote says, I would say, and this is a good example of that. Even if you're voted out, you don't have to leave. And I personally think if they want to force her out, they should be able to. But if she wants to use force back, I guess she should be able to. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Ukraine war increasingly seen as fault by the poor as Zelensky raises taxes and proposes strict mobilization laws from theconversation.com by Grass Taste Bata. And I said, all wars are fought by the poor. The rich always have a way out. Then we have civil discourse rule implemented from Paton 13. And I couldn't comment on that one because it's locked, but I think it's interesting how it's a uncensored server, but they lock posts and justify lots of censorship. But that's just how the internet is these days. You can't really have an uncensored platform on the internet these days without someone coming after you for it. And yeah, I personally don't think we need any rules, as I said earlier. But ultimately, people in positions of authority will justify implementing whatever rules they want to, and sometimes you just have to cope with it. Then we have Arpentidos de Millet from, and that's a tweet from Arpentidos de Millet, and it's from Anarcho Federation. They said they regret Millet block lines for getting gas prices at 5,000 pesos in Corrientes. Venezuela is starting off strong, and I said, I'm sure that the decades of Peronism have nothing to do with it. I definitely don't think Millet's improved, but I definitely think he's been doing well so far, so that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Let's Talk About NY, the NRA, and Late Breaking News, and that's from Anarcho Federation, and it's a video from Boa, the Fifth Column, and I said, the NRA is a GOP grift, gun owners America, GOA is much better. And then Paton 13 replied, both are grifts. And I said, pretty much everything is a grift, to be honest. Everyone really wants to sell you something, Everyone's gotta get food on the table somehow. So that's my thoughts on that issue. We have Donald Trump ridiculed for bizarre magnet remarks at Iowa rally from Newsweek.com by Kage blah blah blah. And I said, R/Politics Jr. at it again. Even if he loses in 2024, you guys still aren't going to shut up about him. I don't like him, but I fucking hate the endless orange man bad circle jerk. Then we have fear-mongering about trans mass shooters is a psyop to get conservatives to support red flag laws, and if you don't see that, you're an idiot. Regardless of the perpetrator, mass shootings are incredibly rare events which should not drive public policy from the Arizona Mises Caucus, and I posted that, and I said, agreed, gun control is not libertarian regardless of the justification for it. And then we have quotes from presidents, and that's from Chad Muffin. And when Joe Biden says, you can't be pro-insurrection and pro-America, well, Thomas Jefferson says, what country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that the people preserve the spirit of resistance? And I guess I would agree with that. Ultimately, all power does come from physical force, I would say, and sometimes you might have to justify using it if you want to stand up against tyrants. So that's my fault, again, on that issue. Then we have watch Senator Michaela Cavanaugh chants on floor of legislature for more than 2 minutes from KLKN TV on YouTube, and I posted that. And that's her chanting about trans rights and all that, trans. And I said, feels like a lot of politics these days. LARPing and just chanting the magic words and nothing else. It really feels like it's all just theater mostly, and that's increasingly what politics, it's kind of always been, I would say, but, especially these days, though, I would say, social media. Then we have Florida bill targets LGBTQ plus content as felony grooming from LosAngelesBlade.com by Whittling Dan. And I personally don't care for this, but I don't care for really any bill, It's all the state trying to enforce its bullshit on you, and I think you should just nullify it and say, I don't agree with this, I am civilly disobeying. So that's my fault on that issue. Then we have school board members could soon be blocked from blocking people and deleting their comments on social media from Paton 13 from theconversation.com. And I said, I don't know if I commented on this one, but yeah, I definitely think ultimately, I guess that is freedom of speech. But you do, if you act as a public official, you should be able to not block any of your constituents. But that's also, you have to argue, is freedom of association. Should you, even if you're a public official, you still should be able to block you. So I guess I could go either way on that. I'm the freedom of speech side and the freedom of association side. People will justify what they justify. I don't think it really matters. Then we have Kissinger's obsession with um, Chile enabled a murderous dictatorship that still haunts the country, from theconversation.com by Patan13. And yeah, I don't really care for that. I think yeah. We shouldn't be justifying all this US interventionism like we do currently, and this is a good example as to why. Then we have Trump just promised an authoritarian task force to impose Christian ideology from MSNBC.com by geeky username. And I personally don't really care for that. But they all just want to bully you into accepting all their things, so I don't think that's good. Then we have the unpredictable but entirely possible events that could throw 2024 into turmoil from uh, Padam 13 from Politico.com. And yeah, I definitely do think, something could happen, but I think it's going to be probably calmer than 2020. But, it's been so far, but we'll see what happens, I guess. Then we have Biden wants Mexicans stop help stop the margin surge. Here's what Mexico wants in return from NBCNews.com by Zach Ness. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think I like what AP Ignite says here. Neither side wants to fix. They need this crisis to keep their party faithfully engaged. That's all. Pretty much all politics is you need keeping the people engaged and in whatever drama that is currently, so they can justify voting for you forever. I guess. I personally don't really care for it. But it's what seems to be the direction society's headed right now. It's just increasingly obsessed with politics. Hopefully, when Donald Trump retires or goes away, it gets better. But I really doubt it at this point. We'll see what happens. Then we have Mike Pence refutes Trump on January 6th, urges GOP voters to back different candidate in 2024 from USAtoday.com, like Kage blah blah. And yeah, I would agree with that. But I definitely think they're probably just gonna support Trump anyway. I'm just kind of tired of Trump's bullshit, and looks like we're stuck with it for as long as he's active in politics. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there, and I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.